A love story that once ended with a fairy tale kiss might not stay perfect forever. What happens when the dream turns into something far more complicated? Pretty Woman 2 takes us back into the lives of Edward and Vivian, decades after their famous walk down Rodeo Drive. But this time, their story isn't about glass slippers and happy endings. It's about the weight of choices, the shadow of the past, and the test of whether love can survive after the magic fades. The story begins many years after Edward and Vivian's whirlwind romance. They are older now, living in a world that has changed around them. Edward, once the confident businessman who believed money could fix anything, now finds himself facing emptiness. He has wealth, but it no longer brings him happiness. Vivian, on the other hand, has built a life of her own. She has left behind the girl who was once swept away into luxury and has become a strong, independent woman. But success doesn't erase the scars of the past, and she carries a secret she never shared with Edward. When fate brings them together again, it isn't with flowers and limousines. Edward seeks Vivian out after a personal tragedy shakes his world. His empire is crumbling, his health is failing, and he is haunted by regrets of the choices he made. He wonders if the one thing he ever did right, loving Vivian, is the only thing that could save him now. But Vivian is no longer the woman who waited for him in a hotel suite. She has her own battles, and she isn't sure if reopening old wounds is worth the risk. Their reunion is not simple. At first, Vivian resists. She remembers the pain of loving a man who didn't always understand her world, and she fears falling back into a relationship built on a fantasy. But Edward is different now, broken, vulnerable, desperate to prove that his love wasn't just a chapter in her life, but the story he should have written better. As the two spend time together, old chemistry sparks. Yet every tender moment is shadowed by suspicion. Vivian senses Edward is hiding something, and Edward knows that Vivian is keeping a truth from him as well. The suspense deepens when Vivian's secret finally comes to light. Years ago, after Edward left to chase his business dreams, Vivian discovered she was pregnant. She chose to raise their child alone, never telling Edward. That child, now grown, carries both the charm of Vivian and the sharp ambition of Edward, but also the anger of never knowing his father. Edward's return doesn't just reopen his romance with Vivian, it opens the door to a family he didn't know existed, one that might not want him. The son, protective of his mother, sees Edward as a man who abandoned them both. He challenges Edward not with fists, but with questions. Why should he trust him now? What right does Edward have to walk back into their lives after years of absence? This conflict adds layers of tension, making the story more than just a love story. It becomes a battle for redemption, forgiveness, and the meaning of family. The movie builds on suspense by showing Edward torn between repairing his past and facing his uncertain future. His health declines, his fortune vanishes, and yet his greatest fear is losing Vivian again. For Vivian, the question is even more painful. Can she trust the man who once broke her heart, or will she risk everything again only to be left behind? Their son's presence forces them to see their love in a new light, not as a fairy tale, but as a responsibility that demands honesty, sacrifice, and growth. Swept her away, but the man who is finally willing to change. The ending is left open, not with a wedding or a ride into the sunset, but with a promise. Edward and Vivian walk together once more, not knowing how many days they have, but ready to face them as partners, not as a fantasy. This isn't just a continuation of Pretty Woman, it's a reimagining of what happens when fairy tales meet reality. It asks whether love that was once beautiful can survive the weight of time, loss, and truth. And it leaves the audience with a haunting question. Is a second chance at love worth the risk of another heartbreak?